Revenge with Karen.
"You're underdressed for this meeting," the CEO's daughter scoffed, flicking a manicured hand toward my charcoal Armani suit like she was shooing away a pigeon. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, letting the silence stretch out until it became uncomfortable for everyone in the room except me. It was 7:45 a.m. on a Tuesday, and I was standing in the boardroom of a Boston high-rise that cost more per square foot than my first house. Air smelled of burnt espresso and the specific metallic fear that comes right before a $3 billion merger discussion. I've been in this game for 18 years. I've survived market crashes, SEC audits that felt like colonoscopies without anesthesia, and CEOs who thought creative accounting was a legitimate business strategy. I am the person they call when the numbers don't match the dreams. I am the fixer. But today, apparently, I was the help. Ava, 27-year-old VP of Strategic Partnerships, was wearing a neon pink jumpsuit that looked less like business attire and more like something a reckless bridesmaid would wear to a Vegas bachelorette party. She had an MBA that the ink was still wet on, purchased by her father's donations to the university, and a vocal fry that could strip paint off a battleship. "Did you hear me, Karen?" she asked, looking at her phone, probably checking her engagement metrics on a post about her hustle grind set. "Mr. Gray is expecting a certain level of vibrancy. You look like a stewardess from 1986. The three junior analysts in the corner pretended to be very interested in their iPads. They were terrified. They knew who I was. They knew I knew where the bodies were buried, because I was usually the one holding the shovel. But they also knew Ava was the CEO's daughter. In corporate America, nepotism beats competence 9 times out of 10. "My suit is fine, Ava," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "It's a trick I learned from a litigator in 2008. Never squeak, never shout. Just lower the frequency until they have to lean in to hear you. Mr. Gray isn't coming here for a fashion show. He's coming to decide if he wants to park $3.5 billion of pension fund money in our portfolio. Cares about EBITDA, not my inseam." Ava rolled her eyes, a gesture so dramatic it probably burned a calorie. "God, you're so literal. This is about energy, Karen. It's about the vibe. Daddy said I'm leading the pitch today because we need fresh energy. You're here for, technical backup, if we need to explain the boring stuff." I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the desperate need for validation masked by arrogance. I saw the terrified little girl playing dress-up in a boardroom she wasn't qualified to clean, let alone command. And I felt something snap. Not a loud snap, like a bone breaking, but a quiet, structural failure deep in my chest. I was done. Listen, before things get really ugly, and trust me, they will if you're into stories about corporate train wrecks and methodical revenge, do me a favor and hit subscribe and maybe upvote. It helps more than you know. Honestly, it's the only validation I'm getting today since my boss replaced my brain with his daughter's ego. Okay, back to the carnage. The door opened, and the CEO, Richard, walked in. Richard was a man who had been failing upward for 40 years, a silver fox with a tan that screamed I spend company time on a golf course in Florida. "Ladies," he boomed, clapping his hands. Big day, big day. Ava, you look spectacular. A vision. Karen, you're here. Good. You bring the binders." "I brought the data, Richard," I said, patting the stack of leather-bound dossiers in front of me. "The actual numbers, the risk assessments, the compliance history." Great, great, he waved me off, pouring himself a coffee. "Just keep those under the table for now. We don't want to bore Daniel Gray to death before Ava works her magic. We're selling the future today, not the past." I tightened my grip on my pen until my knuckles turned white. Past he was referring to was the 18 months I spent reconstructing our balance sheet after Richard tried to acquire a crypto startup that turned out to be 2 guys in a basement in Estonia. The past was the reason this company wasn't currently being liquidated by the feds. "Richard," I said, keeping my voice level. "Daniel Gray runs the Sovereign Vanguard Fund. He eats vision for breakfast and spits out bankruptcy filings. If we don't lead with the fundamentals, he's going to walk." Ava groaned. "Daddy, she's doing it again. She's being a buzzkill. Can you tell her to just let me handle the optics?" Richard sighed, giving me that paternalistic look that makes me want to commit arson. "Karen, please. Ava has an instinct for this generation of investors. Just support her. Okay, be a team player, team player. The corporate equivalent of shut up and take the hit." I looked at the clock. 7:55 a.m. Daniel Gray would be walking through those doors in 5 minutes. I looked at Ava, adjusting her cleavage in the reflection of the window. I looked at Richard, checking his watch, oblivious to the fact that he was about to feed his own company into a wood chipper. Understood, I said, and I meant it. I understood perfectly. If they wanted a show, I'd let them have a show. I wouldn't interrupt. I wouldn't save them. I would sit there in my boring charcoal suit, and I would watch Ava burn, smoothed the cover of my binder, took a sip of my water, and waited for the executioner to arrive. The double doors swung open at exactly 8 a.m. Not a minute early, not a minute late. Daniel Gray didn't operate on approximate time. He operated on absolute time. He walked in, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He wasn't a large man, maybe 5'9", slight build, but he carried himself with the lethal economy of a predator. No wasted movement. He wore a navy suit that fit him so perfectly it looked like a second skin, and his eyes were the color of dirty ice. He didn't smile. He didn't apologize for the traffic. He just walked to the head of the table, placed a single, slim notebook down, and looked at us. Behind him trailed 2 junior associates, looking like nervous squires attending a knight who was known to behead his own staff. "Mr. Gray," Ava practically squealed, bouncing out of her chair. She extended a hand, her bracelets jangling like a bag of silverware falling downstairs. "I'm Ava, so hyped to finally connect. Big fan of your portfolio's diversity matrix." Gray looked at her hand for a full second before taking it. It was a limp, perfunctory shake. "Miss Sterling," he said. His voice was dry, like dead leaves scraping across concrete. "Your father speaks highly of you." "Oh, Daddy's biased," Ava laughed, tossing her hair. She gestured for everyone to sit. "But seriously, we are ready to blow your mind today. We're thinking outside the box, inside the sphere, you know, paradigm shifts." I took a sip of water to hide the grimace. Inside the sphere? What the hell did that even mean? Richard beamed from the sidelines, looking like a proud parent at a toddler's recital, oblivious to the fact that the toddler was currently juggling chainsaws. "Ava has prepared a presentation that really captures our forward momentum, Daniel. I think you'll find it refreshing." Gray didn't look at Richard. He sat down, opened his notebook, and uncapped a fountain pen. "I have 90 minutes, he said. "My analysts have reviewed your 10K. I have specific questions regarding your debt-to-equity ratio in the emerging markets sector and the liquidity of your Class B shares." He looked up, scanning the room. His eyes slid over Richard, dismissed the trembling analysts in the corner, and landed on me. He held my gaze for a beat. It wasn't a flirtatious look, it was a recognition of species. He saw the tired eyes, the rigid posture, the lack of smiling. He saw the predator in the charcoal suit. Then Ava clapped her hands. "Totally, totally. We can get into the weeds later. But first, let's talk about the story." She dimmed the lights and clicked a remote. Massive screen at the end of the room lit up with a slide that just said Synergy in a font that looked like graffiti. "The market is a conversation." Ava began, pacing the room. She was using her hands too much, chopping the air. "And right now, our company is shouting. But are we listening? We're pivoting to a consumer-first, eco-conscious, digital-native narrative." I watched Gray. He hadn't written a single word, was staring at the slide with an expression that sat somewhere between boredom and mild nausea. "We're launching an influencer campaign," Ava continued, clicking to the next slide, which showed a collage of TikTok stars holding our products. "We call it Project Vibe. We estimate a 400% increase in brand sentimentality within Q3. "Sentimentality isn't a metric," Gray said. He didn't raise his voice, just dropped the sentence into the air like a stone. Ava froze. She blinked, her smile faltering. "Well, I mean brand love, engagement. It translates to sales eventually." Eventually, Gray repeated. He looked at Richard. "You're asking for $3.5 billion of capital, and your opening pitch is brand love?" Richard chuckled nervously. "Daniel, it's about capturing the demographic." The youth market doesn't have pensions," Gray cut him off. Turned back to Ava. "What is your customer acquisition cost for this Project Vibe versus your traditional channels?" Ava opened her mouth. Nothing came out. She looked at the screen as if the answer might magically appear on the face of the TikTok teenager. Well, the data is it's fluid, because it's organic growth, right?" "It's not fluid," I said. The room went silent. Ava whipped her head around to glare at me. Richard looked like he wanted to throw his coffee cup at my head. But Gray just turned his chair slightly to face me. "It's not fluid," I repeated, keeping my voice flat. "The CAC for digital influencer channels is currently averaging $42 per unit. which is 18% higher than our direct mail legacy strategy. But the lifetime value of those customers is 30% lower because they have a churn rate of 6 months. He finally touched his pen to the paper. He wrote something down. Karen, Ava hissed, her smile now looking more like a rictus of pain. I was getting to that. You don't have to interrupt the flow. There's no flow, Ava, I thought, but didn't say. There's only a drain, and we are circling it. Go on, Gray said to me, ignoring Ava completely. Why is the churn rate so high? I hesitated. This was the moment. I could save Ava. I could give a vague answer. Blame market volatility. Blame the economy. That's what a team player would do. That's what the Karen of 10 years ago would have done. But then I looked at Ava's sneer. I remembered the stewardess comment. I remembered Richard telling me to stay under the table. The churn rate is high, I said, locking eyes with Gray, because the product quality in the new vertical was compromised to pay for the marketing budget. We cut R&D by 15% to fund the influencers. Customers buy it once, realize it's inferior, and never come back. Richard gasped, actually gasped. Karen, that is contextually inaccurate. Gray didn't look at Richard. He just nodded at me. Continue. Ava looked like she had just been slapped with a wet trout. She stood there in the dim light of her synergy slide, realizing for the first time that this wasn't a game, and I wasn't an NPC in her main character journey. I was the one holding the controller. After my little truth bomb about the R&D cuts, the air in the room was so thick you could choke on it. Richard, in a panic, called for strategic recess. Let's take 10, he chirped, sweating through his polo shirt. Refresh coffee, bio break. Ava, let's regroup on the slides. He grabbed Ava by the elbow and practically dragged her into the adjoining kitchenette, where I could hear aggressive whispering. It sounded like a raccoon fighting inside a trash can. I stayed seated, organizing my papers. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to hide in the bathroom. I had dropped the match. I was going to watch the fire. Daniel Gray stood up. He buttoned his jacket. Miss Sterling, he said to me, walk me to the elevator. I need to make a call. It wasn't a request. I stood up, smoothed my skirt, and walked him out of the boardroom, past the terrified junior analysts who looked at me like I was Joan of Arc on her way to the stake. Hallway was quiet. The plush carpet swallowed the sound of our footsteps. We walked in silence to the elevator bank. He pressed the button but didn't look at his phone. He turned to me. How long? He asked. 18 years, I said. No, he said. How long has the daughter been running things? 3 months, I replied, since Richard decided he wanted a legacy that looked good on Instagram. Gray nodded, watching the floor numbers tick down. I've seen this before, usually in family-owned manufacturing firms in the Midwest. The patriarch gets old, gets scared of irrelevance, brings in the kid who thinks business is a TED talk. He looked at me. You're the only reason the stock hasn't tanked yet, aren't you? I manage expectations, I said diplomatically. And I clean up the spills. You're doing more than cleaning up spills. You're holding up the ceiling. The elevator dinged. The doors slid open, revealing the mirrored interior. Didn't get in. He just stood there, holding the door with one hand. Why stay? He asked. You could run IR for any Fortune 500 in the city. Why stay here and let a 27-year-old amateur insult you in front of a $3 billion prospect? I looked at my reflection in the elevator mirror. I looked tired, but I also looked sharp, dangerous. Because I built this, I said quietly. I built the relationships. I built the trust with the banks. I structured the debt that allowed Richard to buy his third house. They think I'm part of the furniture. They forgot that the furniture is what holds the house up. Gray smiled. It was a terrifying expression, like a shark recognizing blood in the water. I'm not going to invest, he said. My stomach dropped. I knew it was coming, but hearing it out loud still hurt. It felt like a failure of my duty, even if I wanted them to suffer. However, he continued, not going to walk away yet either. I want to see how this plays out. I want to see if there's anything worth salvaging from the wreckage. He leaned in slightly. Let her talk when we go back in. Give her enough rope. I want to see if she hangs herself or if she strangles the company first. And if she strangles the company, I asked. Then we pick the carcass clean, he said. But if you take the lead, if you show me there's a pilot in the cockpit, we might proceed. Let go of the door. 5 minutes, Karen. Then the real meeting starts. He walked into the elevator to take his call. The doors closed. I stood in the hallway for a moment, my heart hammering against my ribs. It wasn't fear anymore. It was adrenaline. High-octane, premium, unleaded adrenaline. Gray had just given me permission. No, he'd given me a mandate. I walked back toward the boardroom. I could hear Ava's voice rising from the kitchenette. It's just jealousy. Eddie, she's jealous because I'm young and I have vision and she's just administrative. She's a glorified secretary with a calculator. I know, honey, I know, Richard was soothing her. But we need her for the numbers. Just dazzle him. Use the charm, you're a star. I stopped outside the door, glorified secretary. I took a deep breath. I imagined pulling a pin on a grenade. Then I pushed the door open and walked back in. Ready for round 2? I asked, my voice cheerful, almost bright. Ava spun around, glaring. Just sit down and shut up, Karen. I'm handling this. By all means, I said, taking my seat and opening my binder to the section marked Regulatory Risks. Dazzle us. When Gray returned, he didn't sit down immediately. He walked to the window, looked out at the Boston skyline, and then turned his chair so he was facing Ava directly. Miss Sterling, he said, let's move past the marketing. I want to talk about governance. Ava brightened. She thought governance meant company culture. She thought it meant pizza Fridays and casual dress codes. Oh, absolutely, she beamed, clicking her remote. A slide appeared titled Our Tribe. It featured stock photos of diverse people high-fiving in a sunlit park. We believe in a horizontal hierarchy. We're empowering our team members to be their own CEOs. It's about holistic ownership. I'm referring to your board structure and audit committee oversight, Ray said. I noticed in your last proxy statement that your audit committee head is your uncle. Ava blinked. Uncle Jerry? Yeah, he's great. He's a dentist, but he's really good with money. He manages his own portfolio. The silence that followed was so loud it was deafening. A dentist. The head of the audit committee for a company seeking institutional capital was a dentist. I slowly slid a document across the mahogany table. It made a heavy, distinct SHHHHK sound. It was the governance reform proposal I had written 2 years ago, the one Richard had thrown in the trash because it would have removed his family members from the payroll. Mr. Gray, I said softly, if you look at tab 4 in the packet I just provided, you'll see the risk mitigation strategy regarding board composition. The current structure is familial. We have outlined a transition plan to bring in 3 independent directors within the next fiscal quarter to comply with Sarbanes-Oxley requirements for public listing, should we go that route. Gray picked up the packet. He flipped to tab 4. He read it. Ava stared at the packet like it was a pipe bomb. I didn't approve that document. Karen, why are you handing out unapproved materials? Because, I said, not looking at her, keeping my eyes on Gray, Mr. Gray asked about governance. And Uncle Jerry is a dentist is not an answer that gets you a check with 9 zeros on it. Richard interjected, his face turning a shade of plum. Now, Jerry is a very astute businessman. And Karen, we haven't agreed to any independent directors. Then you're not compliant, Gray said, closing the packet. He looked at Richard. You're asking me to leverage pension funds. If I take this to my investment committee and tell them the audit chair fills cavities for living, they will laugh me out of the room. And then they will short your stock. Ava looked at her father. She looked scared. The buzzwords were failing her. The vibe was dying. But our culture, she stammered. We have a ping-pong table in the break room. We have mental health days. You have a $12 million regulatory exposure, I said. I've outlined the potential SEC fines on page 15. Exceeds your projected Q4 profit margin. Ava snatched the packet from Gray's hand, actually snatched it and stared at page 15. This is negative. Why would you show him this? You're sabotaging us. I'm disclosing material risk, I said. It's called the law, Ava. If we don't disclose it and he invests and then finds out, that's fraud, that's prison. Not white-collar resort prison. Real prison. With jumpsuits that definitely don't fit your aesthetic. Gray actually let out a short, dry sound. It might have been a laugh. She's right, Gray said. He took the packet back from Ava's trembling hand. She's saving you from a lawsuit, Miss Sterling. You should be thanking her. Ava's face went from pale to red. The humiliation was total. She was being schooled in her own boardroom by the secretary she despised. I need a break, Ava announced abruptly. Her voice was high and tight. I need to check on the lunch catering. She turned and marched out of the room on her wobble heels. We all knew she wasn't checking on lunch. She was going to cry in the bathroom or call her mother. Richard looked at me with pure hatred. You are undermining her, he hissed. I'm saving your deal, Richard, I replied calmly. Gray watched the door close behind Ava, then he looked at me. Keep talking, he said. Tell me about the debt structure. And for the next 20 minutes, with Ava crying in the bathroom and Richard sulking in his chair, I did exactly what I was paid to do. I ran the meeting. The session on debt structuring went flawlessly. Without Ava there to interject with holistic synergies, I walked Gray through our capital stack, our bond ratings, and our liquidity ratios. It was like playing tennis with a pro, fast, precise, no wasted motion. But then Ava returned. She had clearly fixed her makeup. Eyes were red-rimmed, but she had reapplied her lip gloss and her arrogance. She walked in carrying a tray of artisanal sandwiches that nobody asked for, acting as if her meltdown hadn't happened. "Okay," she announced, slamming the tray down. "Food for thought. Literally, get it?" Nobody laughed. As I reached for my water, my phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from Richard, sitting 3 feet away from me. "Stop talking. You've made your point. Let Ava close. She needs this win. If you say one more word about compliance, we're having a very different conversation on Monday regarding your employment." I stared at the screen. There it was. The ultimatum. He was willing to tank the deal, risk the fraud charges, and destroy the company's credibility just to protect his daughter's fragile ego. He would fire the only person who knew how to fly the plane just so his daughter could wear the captain's hat while we crashed. I looked up at Richard. He gave me a tight, warning smile. Then I looked at the junior analyst sitting to Gray's left, a young woman, maybe 25, sharp eyes, wearing a suit that was professional and modest. Throughout the meeting, she had been taking furious notes every time I spoke. She caught my eye. She gave the tiniest, almost imperceptible nod. Then she tapped her pen on her notebook twice. It was a signal. "We hear you. We know who's doing the work." It's funny. In that moment, I felt more kinship with the strangers across the table, the people who were technically our adversaries, than I did with the man I had worked for nearly 2 decades. Gray cleared his throat. "Miss Sterling," he said to Ava, "your associate has explained the debt handling. I'd like to hear your plan for the future revenue streams, specifically how you plan to monetize the new software platform." This was the trap. The software platform didn't exist. It was a vaporware concept Richard had floated to boost the stock price last quarter. Ava lit up. "Oh, the platform. It's going to be the Uber of what we do. It's fully scalable, AI-driven, blockchain-enabled." She was just saying words she had heard on CNBC. "Who is the lead developer?" Gray asked. "We're sourcing talent right now," Ava said, "but the vision is there." "You don't have a CTO?" Gray asked. "We have a fractional CTO," Ava said. "He's very agile." I knew the fractional CTO. It was a freelancer in Ukraine. We paid $50 an hour to maintain the website. I looked at my phone. Stop talking. I looked at Ava, drowning in her own buzzwords. I looked at Gray, who was waiting for me to intervene, to save them, to lie. If I stayed silent, the deal died. If I spoke, I got fired. I took a slow sip of water. I thought about my mortgage. I thought about my 401k. I thought about the 18 years of weekends I gave this place. And then I thought about Uncle Jerry the dentist. I put the phone face down. "Actually," I said, breaking the silence, "we don't just have a fractional CTO, we have no proprietary code. The platform is white-labeled from a third-party vendor in India. We don't own the IP." Ava gasped. "Karen," Richard slammed his hand on the table. "That is enough." Gray didn't blink. He looked at me. "We don't own the IP?" "No," I said, my voice steady. "We license it. If we miss a payment, they shut it off. It's in the vendor contracts, tab 7. Richard stood up. "I think we're done here. Karen, get out, now." "Sit down, Richard," Gray said. His voice wasn't loud, but it had the weight of an anvil. Richard froze. "Excuse me?" I said, "Sit down," Gray repeated. "Unless you want me to call the SEC right now and report you for material misrepresentation during a funding solicitation." Richard sat down. He looked like he was having a stroke. Ava looked like she was going to vomit. "Karen," Gray said, using my first name for the first time, "tell me about the licensing agreement." And I did. I ignored my boss. I ignored his daughter. I laid out the corpse of the company on the table and performed the autopsy right there in front of them. For the next hour, it wasn't a pitch meeting. It was a deposition. Gray asked questions. I answered them truthfully. Ava and Richard sat there in stunned silence, like 2 statues commissioned to commemorate the death of competence. Every time I spoke, I could feel the severance package shrinking. I could visualize my ID badge being deactivated, but it felt euphoric. It was the feeling of taking off a tight corset after wearing it for 20 years. I wasn't spinning the truth anymore. I wasn't polishing a turd. I was just holding it up and saying, "Look, it's a turd." "So," Gray said finally, closing his notebook, "to summarize, your marketing strategy is based on bots, your audit chair is a dentist, your software is rented, and your CEO is suppressing internal risk assessments." That's an aggressive interpretation, Richard croaked. Sounded 10 years older than he had that morning. It's the factual interpretation, Gray said. He looked at Ava. And you think vibes are a substitute for solvent assets. Ava, to her credit or perhaps her delusion, tried one last Hail Mary. She stood up, tears welling in her eyes, trembling. You're being mean, she said. Her voice wobbled. You're just old white men trying to gatekeep. I have a vision. I have followers. You have nothing, Gray said. Didn't say it cruelly. He said it like he was reading a weather report. You are an empty suit, Miss Sterling, and not even a well-tailored one. Ava burst into tears. Real, ugly tears. She grabbed her bag and ran out of the room. This time, Richard didn't chase her. He just slumped in his chair, staring at the mahogany table as if it held the answers to where his life went wrong. Gray stood up. His 2 analysts stood up with him. Thank you for your time, he said to Richard. Richard looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. So, is that a no, or? We'll be in touch, Gray said. It was the standard non-answer. Then Gray turned to me. He extended his hand. Karen, he said, thank you for the transparency. It is rare. I shook his hand. His grip was firm, dry, and respectful. Just doing my job, Mr. Gray. For now, Richard muttered under his breath. Gray heard it. He paused, looking at Richard, then back at me. Didn't say anything else. He just turned and walked out, his analysts trailing him like silent shadows. The door clicked shut. I was alone in the room with Richard. The silence was heavy, filled with the ghosts of the careers I had just ended, including my own. Richard slowly turned his head to look at me. His face was a mask of cold fury. You're done, he whispered. You know that, right? You're finished in this town. I will blacklist you. Will sue you for breach of confidentiality. I will make sure you never work in IR again. I stood up. I gathered my binders. I stacked them neatly. Richard, I said, looking him dead in the eye. I didn't breach confidentiality. I prevented fraud. There's a difference. And if you sue me, I will depose Ava. I will put her on a stand and ask her to explain what EBITDA stands for under oath. Do you want that? Richard's mouth opened, then closed. He turned purple. I'm going to my office to pack, I said. Send HR down with the paperwork. And Richard, tell Ava she left her sandwich tray. I walked out. My legs were shaking, but my head was high. I had just nuked my career, but I had saved my dignity, or so I thought. I didn't know that the game wasn't over. I didn't know that Daniel Gray hadn't just left the building. He was making a call. My office was a corner suite with a view of the harbor. I had fought for this view, had earned it deal by deal, crisis by crisis. Now, it looked like a stranger's room. I pulled a cardboard box from the supply closet, the universal symbol of corporate death. I started packing. The framed photo of my golden retriever, Buster Rip, the Crystal Deal of the Year award from 2015, the stash of emergency chocolate in the drawer. My hands were trembling. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by a crushing wave of nausea. What had I just done? I was 52 years old. I had a mortgage. I had bills. Who hires a whistleblower? Who hires the woman who sinks the ship she's on? I heard a knock at the door. It was Linda from HR. Linda and I used to get margaritas on Fridays. Now, she wouldn't meet my eyes. She was holding a manila envelope. Karen, she said, her voice tight. Richard asked me to bring this. The termination notice? I asked, dropping a stapler into the box. Administrative leave pending investigation, she corrected. It's a formality before the firing. He wants you escorted out. Security is on the way. Security? I laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. I've worked here for 18 years, Linda. You think I'm going to steal the staplers? I'm sorry, she whispered. He's furious. He's breaking things upstairs. Ava is hysterical. Ava is always hysterical, I muttered. 2 security guards appeared behind Linda. They were new guys, contracted muscle. They looked at me like I was a threat. Ma'am, one of them said, we need your badge and your laptop. I handed them over. I felt naked without them. My identity stripped away in seconds. I'm ready, I said, picking up my box. We did the walk of shame. Past the cubicles where junior analysts pretended not to see me. Past the break room where the coffee was stale. Past the receptionist who looked like she was about to cry. Escorted me to the elevator. Down to the lobby. Through the glass doors and onto the sidewalk. It was raining. Of course it was raining. It was a cliché, but the universe apparently lacks imagination. I stood there on the wet pavement, holding my box, water ruining my hair, thinking about how I was going to explain this to my mother. Yeah, Mom, I got fired because I refused to let a 20-something influencer ruin a billion-dollar company. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I almost didn't answer it. It was probably Richard calling to scream at me one last time. But it wasn't Richard. It was a number I didn't recognize. A 212 area code. Nick. I balanced the box on my knee and answered. This is Karen, it's Daniel Gray. I nearly dropped the phone. Mr. Gray, where are you? I'm on the sidewalk, I said. I've just been escorted out of the building. Good, he said. That saves me the trouble of getting you a visitor pass. I don't understand. I'm still in the lobby, he said. I didn't leave. Turn around. I turned. Through the rain-streaked glass of the building's massive lobby, I saw him. He was standing there, holding his phone to his ear, looking at me. Come back inside, Karen, he said. I can't, I said. They took my badge. I'm persona non grata. Not anymore, he said. I just bought the debt. What? Company has a bridge loan that was expiring next week. A messy little detail Richard forgot to mention, but my analysts found it. I just bought the note from the bank. Technically, as of 5 minutes ago, I am the primary creditor of this organization, which means I own the furniture, I own the lights, and I own Richard. I stared at him through the glass. Come back inside, he repeated. We have a meeting to finish, and you're underdressed for the rain. I walked back through the revolving doors. The security guards who had just kicked me out stepped forward to stop me. Gray raised one finger. She's with me. The guards stopped. They looked at Gray. They looked at his suit. They looked at the way he stood. They backed down. Money talks, but big money commands. Leave the box, Gray said. You won't need it. I left the box of shame on the security desk. We got into the elevator. The ride up was silent. It was a comfortable silence. Why? I asked. Because I like companies with good bones, Gray said. This place has good bones. It just has a termite infestation in the C-suite. You're the exterminator. The elevator doors opened. We walked back down the hall. The junior analysts gasped when they saw me. Linda from HR dropped a folder. We walked straight into Richard's office. He was on the phone, yelling at someone, probably his lawyer. Ava was sitting on his sofa, icing her eyes with a cold can of Diet Coke. When we walked in, Richard dropped the phone. What the hell is she doing here? He roared. Security. I said security. Security works for me now, Richard, Gray said, walking over and sitting on the edge of Richard's massive desk. He picked up a Newton's cradle and started clicking it. Clack, clack, clack. What are you talking about? Richard demanded. The bridge loan, Gray said softly. The $20 million you owe City National. We're very happy to sell the note to me at 90 cents on the dollar. They were worried about your solvency. With good reason. Richard went pale. You can't do that. I did. And since you are in default on the covenants, specifically the one about maintaining a qualified audit committee, I am calling the loan. Immediately. Richard sank into his chair. I don't have $20 million liquid. I know, Gray said, but you have equity. So here's the deal. Convert the debt to equity. I become the majority shareholder. You step down as CEO. You become, let's say, chairman emeritus. You can play golf. You can keep your car. And Ava, Richard whispered. Gray looked at Ava. She looked small. Ava is fired, Gray said, for cause. Gross incompetence in creating a hostile work environment. Ava shrieked. You can't fire me. My dad owns the company. Not anymore, Gray said. He stood up and turned to me. Board meets on Monday to appoint a new interim CEO, Gray said. I'm nominating Karen. The room went dead silent. Richard looked at me. Ava looked at me. Her? Ava spat. She's a nobody. She wears suits from the outlet mall. I took a step forward. I walked right up to Ava. I looked down at her. It's not an outlet mall, Ava, I said, my voice calm, steady, and terrifyingly quiet. It's vintage. And unlike you, it has value that increases over time. I turned to Richard. I'll need access to the executive files immediately, I said. And Richard, I'm going to need you to vacate this office by 5:00 p.m. I have a lot of work to do to fix the mess you made. Richard looked at Gray. Gray just nodded. Richard stood up. He looked old, defeated. He grabbed his jacket. Come on, Ava, he said. But Daddy, come on, he snapped. They walked out. I watched them go. The nepotism baby and the dinosaur, extinct. Monday morning, 8:00 a.m. I walked into the corner office. The smell of Richard's cologne was gone, replaced by the scent of lemon polish and fresh air. The desk was clear. The golf trophies were gone. I sat down in the leather chair. It was comfortable. It fit. My email inbox was already full. But for the first time in years, I didn't dread opening it. I had a team. I had a mandate. I had power. Linda from HR came in looking sheepish. Good morning, Miss Sterling. Karen, what should I call you? Karen is fine, Linda, I said. But let's get those independent directors vetted. I want resumes on my desk by noon. Yes, ma'am, she smiled. A real smile. She knew the ship wasn't sinking anymore. I opened the top drawer of the desk. There was a single envelope inside. It was handwritten. I opened it. It was a note from Daniel Gray. Karen, competence is the only currency that matters. You're rich. P.S. Burn the synergy slides. All of them, D. Gray, I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. I swiveled the chair around to look at the view. The harbor was sparkling. The rain had cleared. Ava was probably on TikTok right now, spinning a narrative about how she was bullied out of her position by the patriarchy. Richard was probably drinking a scotch at 9 a.m., but I was here, in the chair. I picked up the phone. Get me the R&D department, I said to the assistant. Want to talk about refunding the product line and order some lunch. But no artisanal sandwiches, just good, solid food. I hung up. I pulled a file toward me. The numbers were ugly. The road ahead was going to be brutal. We had debt to clear, trust to rebuild, and a market to convince. But for the first time in 18 years, I wasn't fixing someone else's mess. I was building my own house. I took a sip of my coffee. It tasted like victory. And you know what? My suit looked damn good.